The second impeachment trial against former U.S. President Donald Trump has begun. Vote counting continues in Ecuador's general elections with 98% of the votes counted. Andrés Arauz wins first round with 32% of the votes. And in Myanmar, protesters opposing the military takeover marched in Yangon on Tuesday. Hello and welcome to teleSUR English. I am Estefania Bravo from the headquarters of Quito in Ecuador. This is from the south. The U.S. Senate opened Donald Trump's second impeachment trial this Tuesday. The former president is charged with inciting the deadly mob attack on the Capitol, which prosecutors have called the most grievous constitutional crime. Senator Patrick Leahy is presiding over the impeachment trial, which began with the adoption of a resolution that provides for the organization procedures. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer said Trump's second impeachment trial represents the gravest charge ever brought against the U.S. president.
You will not be hearing extended lectures from me because our case is based on cold, hard facts. It's all about the facts.
And you don't need to be a constitutional scholar to know that the argument President Trump asks you to adopt is not just wrong, it's dangerous. And you don't have to take my word for it. This body, the world's greatest deliberative body, the United States Senate, has reached that same conclusion in one form or another over the past 200 years in multiple occasions that we'll go through. Over 150 constitutional scholars, experts, judges, conservative, liberal, you name it, they overwhelmingly have reached the same conclusion, that of course you can try, convict, and disqualify.
A gunman opened fire inside a health clinic in the U.S. on Tuesday, leaving at least 5 people wounded before a bomb exploded at the facility. Police were called to the Alina Health Clinic in Buffalo, Minnesota State just before 11 a.m. According to Buffalo Police Chief Pat Butke, the device went off in the clinic around half an hour later. The explosion forced medical workers to flee the clinic's parking lot and set up from further away. At least 5 people were critically injured, including a woman airlifted to a hospital with 3 gunshot wounds. The male shooter was taken into custody. And this Tuesday, UK Health Secretary Matt Hancock announced stricter travel restrictions to reduce coronavirus transmissions and prevent new variants from entering the country. The latest measures are to take effect from Monday and include a 10-year prison sentence for those who attempt to hide traveling from 33 red list countries on the passenger locator form. Anyone traveling from flagged destinations must pay over $2,400 for a quarantine package, which includes transport, 2 PCR tests, and 10 days stay at a designated hotel. A series of fines range from $1,400 to $14,000 for failure to comply with testing or quarantine.
I'd like to set out to the House the new system of health measures at the border that will come into force on Monday. The new measures build on the tough action that we've already taken. It is, of course, illegal to travel abroad without a legally permitted reason to do so. So it's illegal to travel abroad for holidays and other leisure.
Greek Prime Minister Kyriakos Mitsotakis announced a stricter lockdown in the capital Athens, shutting retail outlets and schools as the country faces a third wave of the coronavirus pandemic. Greece was hit with the first wave of the virus in March last year before infections eased off, surging again in the autumn, prompting the government to reimpose a nationwide lockdown. Nearly 6,000 deaths in Greece have been attributed to the coronavirus since the start of the pandemic, and more than 270 people are currently in intensive care. So far, nearly 420,000 people in the country of 11 million have received at least one vaccine dose. However, Greece has joined other EU countries in limiting the use of AstraZeneca's vaccine to under 65s as it awaits data on its efficacy. Greece has been under national lockdown since November, with movement restricted between different regions and other people required to give a valid reason for leaving their homes.
Two facts are of particular concern to us. On the one hand, the increase of those hospitalized in Attica, which are gradually filling up the health centers, and, on the other hand, the mutations of the virus that seem to accelerate transmissibility. Based on the new data, I take responsibility for the additional measures for the protection of public health. From Thursday until February the 28th, there will be increased restrictive measures in Attica. This means that all forms of retail will be closed and all levels of education will operate online.
And WHO Food Safety and Animal Diseases expert Peter Ben Mbarek said on Tuesday that coronavirus was extremely unlikely to have leaked from a Chinese lab and most probably jumped to humans via an intermediary species.
Our initial findings suggest that the introduction through an intermediary host species is the most likely pathways and one that will require more studies and more specific targeted research. The findings suggest that the laboratory incident hypothesis is extremely unlikely and to explain the introduction of the virus into the human population, and therefore is not a hypothesis that will implies to suggest future studies into our work to support our future work into the understanding of the origin of the virus. There was also a large amount of testing for the coronavirus responsible.
World Health Organization Chief Scientist Soumya Swaminathan said China's plans to provide 10 million doses of COVID-19 vaccines to COVAX is encouraging.
We need as many good vaccines, safe and efficacious vaccines as possible. China has several vaccines under development, and we are talking we are speaking with all of them. And we are also looking at the dossiers for Sinopharm and Sinovac. And the team is in China, as Dr. Simao mentioned. And we've also heard from them that they would be willing to discuss with the COVAX facility provision initially of 10 million doses over the next few months. So we're very encouraged by that.
Let's take a very short break now. Join us again after this. And also don't forget to follow me on my Twitter account at ibravo telesur for more news. Stay with us. Welcome back to From the South. More news now. At a press conference in Ecuador, presidential candidate for the Union for Hope coalition, Andrés Arauz, called on all political sectors to consolidate social unity and peace in the country.
We call to all political actors involved in this electoral process that we have patience, that we act with prudence. We call for non-violence, to keep the situation in peace, and that all the elements that remain pending be resolved in accordance with the Code of Democracy and the institutional mechanisms established. So we are fully open to collaborate so that this process continues to go forward and that it be done with the utmost transparency, respecting the will of the people.
And in this press conference, presidential candidate Andrés Arauz noted that in the general elections of February 7th, the people expressed their total rejection of the neoliberal model promoted by the government of Lenín Moreno.
The results of February 7th shows us that approximately 70% opt for options linked to social justice and prosperity, searched through a large bloc that represents progressivism, plurinational unity, and social democracy, to propose a project as a country that overcomes the bad practices of banking neoliberalism of the government of Lenin Moreno.
According to the latest report released by the CNE, Andrés Arauz is leading the vote with 32.02% of the vote, followed by the representative of the Pachakutik Party, Yacu Perez, with 20.13%, and Guillermo Lasso with 19.49%. So far, the electoral body's computer center has counted 98% of the votes. A runoff vote between Arauz and either Yacu Perez or Guillermo Lasso is set to take place on April 11th. Moving on, this Tuesday, the Venezuelan National Assembly's Special Commission for Dialogue, Peace, and National Reconciliation met with workers' representatives to discuss legislative proposals to strengthen protection of the working class in the midst of the U.S. blockade. The meeting between parliamentarians and union representatives seeks to establish proposals such as the creation of new laws for the defense of workers and the revision of the anti-blockade economic laws. The president of the National Assembly, Jorge Rodriguez, stressed the importance of listening to those most affected by the aggressions of the U.S., while also highlighting the serious effects of the coercive measures imposed by Washington on the entire Venezuelan population.
The current government of the United States of America recognizes the serious effects that the sanctions against Venezuela have had on the lives of the Venezuelan people. Perhaps you are aware that yesterday a document called See It Go was published, where it is established in black and white that the serious effects that the sanctions against Venezuela have caused have been demonstrated. And where were those sanctions aimed at? Who were the subjects of the aggression of those sanctions? Who were the targets to be attacked with those sanctions? Which sectors of Venezuelan society were to be targeted by the blockade and sanctions? All Venezuelan men and women, without exception.
And the president of the Venezuelan parliament also indicated that the coercive measures imposed by the United States seek to break the will of the Venezuelan people.
But especially, the sanctions were aimed at attacking two victims, Venezuelan women, Venezuelan families, the head of the Venezuelan families, which in our country, fortunately, thank God, is made up of women and working women, because if you attack the income of a country, as the income from our main export product, which is oil, has been attacked, you are messing with the pockets of the workers. We believe that 2021 is a year of great opportunity to definitely defeat this aggression.
This Tuesday, protesters clashed with police in Haiti's capital, Port-au-Prince, after the country's president refused to step down at the end of his 5-year term. Police used tear gas and fired guns at protesters in the streets of the capital, who retaliated by throwing stones and using slings. The country's opposition leaders and their supporters have claimed that President Jovenel Moises' 5-year term has expired and demanded that he step down on February 7th. Instead, on that date, Moise announced that authorities had arrested 23 people accused of plotting an alleged coup to kill him and overthrow his government. Those arrested included a high-ranking police official and a Supreme Court judge who was favored in the opposition. Protesters demand better living conditions and an end to corruption, and also a solution to the problem of kidnapping for ransom, which affects the rich and poor alike. Haiti's government removed the 3 Supreme Court judges who rejected the extension of Jovenel Moises' presidential term. President Jovenel Moise signed on Monday a presidential decree ordering the removal of the judges. One of them is Judge Iviquel da Brasil, who was arrested among a number of people allegedly promoting an attempted coup in the country. Joseph Messin Jean-Louis was another of the removed judges who had previously been appointed by the opposition as interim president. And amidst the situation, 2 journalists were shot and wounded in the immediate surroundings of the National Palace in Port-au-Prince during demonstrations against Jovenel Moise. More than 20 people were also arrested. Demonstrators accused the government of financing armed groups to assassinate and to intimidate them. We're taking one last short break now. Join us again after this.
Who's moving the chess man? What interests and motivate the actors behind each event? What's at stake? Critical Move investigates every event from Monday to Friday. Only on teleSUR.
Hola, ¿qué tal? Sean todos muy bienvenidos a Vidas. Hay lugares donde el arte se unifica con el orgullo de los pueblos. Y esos lugares están llenos de colores, alegría, pasión, tradiciones, arraigo, valor y entrega.
Real Life. Fridays. Only on teleSUR. Innovation, science, the technological breakthrough, and its influence in society.
Viajeros del saber, el futuro está aquí.
Atomy. Monday, only on teleSUR.
Welcome back to From the South. More news now. In Myanmar, where protesters opposing the military takeover marched in Yangon on Tuesday, carrying flags, placards, and chanting slogans as police watched on. No violence was reported in Yangon, the country's biggest city, where thousands of people have been demonstrating since Saturday, despite a heightened security presence. In other parts of Myanmar, police cracked down on demonstrators, firing warning shots and shooting water cannons to disperse crowds that took to the streets again Tuesday in defiance of rules making protests illegal. The decrees issued on Monday night for some areas of Yangon and Mandalay banned rallies and gatherings and some of more than 5 people, along with motorized processions, while also imposing an 8 p.m. to 4 a.m. curfew. In northern India, hundreds of rescue workers continue to search mud-filled ravines and valleys for survivors after part of a Himalayan glacier broke off. The incident unleashed a devastating flood that has left at least 31 people dead and 165 missing. One of the rescue efforts is focused on a tunnel at a hydroelectric power plant where more than 36 workers have been out of contact since the flood occurred on Sunday. Scientists have gone to the site to investigate what caused the break and the flood. Experts say climate change may be to blame since warming temperatures are shrinking glaciers and making them unstable in the world.
We are extricating the mud. It is coming again and again. It's very heavy flow of mud inside the tunnel. So it's a very big challenge, but we are trying our best and with full strength. It's very difficult to predict that how much time it will take. We are trying, all the agencies, we are trying our best to do as far as possible, and we are very hopeful that we will finish the work well in time. We always hope for the best, and we will be very happy, and if God helps us, and we will retrieve some,
Burkina Faso's president started an official visit in Brussels on Tuesday and met with senior European Union officials. Kabori met European Council President Charles Michel and European Parliament President David Sassoli, among others. The West African country, which at first managed to avoid a catastrophic surge of the coronavirus, is now trying to cope with a much deadlier resurgence. Burkina Faso also faces a real terrorist threat as well as many economic challenges. President Kabori said the European European Union and Africa are linked by a long and rich history, and that its partnership must strengthen to ensure a stable future for both continents. On Tuesday, the residents of Poland and Hungary, the Czech Republic, and Slovakia met in northern Poland for 2 days of debates to mark the 30th anniversary of the Visegrad Group. The group is an informal body of political and economic cooperation in the region. The talks will include the fight against the coronavirus pandemic, building energy security, protecting the climate, and international and transatlantic relations. The group, also known as V4, often works out of joint positions in international ties, especially within the European Union. China on Tuesday said U.S. exercises in the South China Sea were not conducive to regional peace and stability.
The U.S. frequently sends warships and aircraft to the South China Sea to show off force. It is not conducive to regional peace and stability. China will continue to take necessary measures to firmly defend its national sovereignty and security and work with regional countries to firmly maintain peace and stability in the South China Sea. The Iranian nuclear issue is now at a critical juncture. The urgent task is that all parties speed up the implementation of the consensus reached at the Foreign Ministerial meeting on the Iranian nuclear issue on December 1st last year, encourage the U.S. to return to the JCPOA unconditionally and resume its compliance with the agreement as soon as possible, and lift all relevant sanctions. Then, on this basis, Iran can return to full compliance with the agreement. China is highly concerned about the development of the relevant situation and has maintained close communication with all relevant parties.
Iran's intelligence minister warned that his country could push for the production of a nuclear weapon if crippling international sanctions on Tehran remain in place.
Our nuclear program is a peaceful one, and in the fatwa by the Supreme Leader explicitly stated that the manufacturing of nuclear weapons is forbidden by the Sharia, and the Islamic Republic won't go after them and consider seeking them as haram. However, if a cat is cornered, it may show a kind of behavior that a free cat would not. If Iran is pushed in that direction, then it wouldn't be Iran's fault, but those who pushed it.
And with that story, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And make sure to follow us on our social media accounts. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram as well. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. See you next time.